Hey, hey, folks! Like you can see, we have a special guest tonight. Stowe has decided to come join us, and we have seen him in a while, and we're excited to have him on for our 330th reflection. And today's reflections, it's a little bit, I don't know.
I'll explain.
I'm curious to it.
The book for the day is The Boys in the Boat, 9 Americans and Their Epic Quest for Gold at the 1936 Berlin Olympics by Daniel James Brown. You guys ever heard of the story or heard of I think they made a movie out of it, actually. But I feel like this is like one of those unbroken kind of books. Remember that book, the movie that Angelina Jolie was in? It's like one of these epic stories that became this huge national bestseller about a true story. This book's about this rowing team, the U.S. rowing team that won the gold at 1936 Olympics, and there's it's about the boys in the boat, 9 Americans that won this race. So first and foremost, this is an incredible book. If you guys have never read this book before, I was like, man, like strapped in from start to finish, just couldn't stop. I mean, it was amazing. It was such a good story. It's like watching Hoosiers for the first time, or like Rudy or whatever. It's like one of those stories. Yeah. It's like, oh my God, like, like everything was like the way that they weaved it in and out, and like the whole story about coming together as a team. And it was such a cool story, man. The title for this one was I'm a Swinger, question mark. Well, I'll explain it in a second here. But man, like there's this, the two stars of this book, in my personal opinion, were this guy named George Pocock. He was like, do you guys remember the movie The Mighty Ducks? You guys ever seen?
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
So you remember that old guy Hans that like Gordon Bombay would go visit whenever he had like moral conundrum? Yep. Do you know what I'm talking about? The old German guy that was like, sharpening skates, So like George Pocock is like the Hans of this group. He's like this expert boat maker, like rowing maker, like handcrafting. And he's like, he only makes like handcrafted boats for like the most premium sought after boats in the world. And he was a big part of this whole thing, but he would just like sit and watch the team, a University of Washington rowing team. So this team started at the University of Washington, right? This was like a college team that came together, and then they won U.S. trials with the same crew, and then they went on to the Olympics, the same crew. It was the same crew all the way through, from like freshman year when they meet at University of Washington all the way through to the Olympics. And then they've had this incredible connection for the rest of their lives because of everything they went through together. And George Pocock was like the dude that would make boats, and he also lived in the Washington area, so he would come by and watch them row out on Lake Washington and stuff like that. He would just sit and do his thing. And their coach, his name was Al Olberkson, he became this really famous coach, but Pocock was just in the background watching, going, oh yeah, I see what you guys are doing. And then when they were a little lost and needed some help, he was their sole teacher. He would come over and give them guidance and get their moral compasses together and psychologically train them and everything. And it was just a cool story, man. It was a really, really cool story. So one thing that I learned, a new word in this book that I absolutely love. So you guys both know flow state, right? I mean, everybody knows what flow state. So like individually, right, when you get into that, just that flow, doing meaningful work, and it feels like time just flies by and you're effortlessly doing what you're doing, it seems like we're the perfect skill level, challenge at the same time, all comes together at one, right? I learned a new term on rowing. You guys know anything about rowing at all? Like
a little bit.
Do you? Okay. So have you ever heard the term swing and rowing? Like, they got to find their swing?
No.
So I didn't know shit about rowing before I read this book, like zero. And I still don't know a lot, but I know a little bit.
Oh, no, there's a coxswain, you can catch a crab, and there's a couple people in a boat.
Well, there's different types of boats. This is the 8 crew boat. So I think this is like the biggest boat they have. Like this is like the most prestigious, I think, of the the full team, 8 full men with the coxswain or whatever his name is.
Coxman.
Yeah. So apparently when there's this thing in rowing that's like this really, really rare thing, like really, really rare, where they call it swing. It's when, here, I'll just read how they describe it because it's better than, it says, there's this thing that sometimes happens in rowing. It's hard to achieve and hard to define. It's called swing. It only happens when all 8 oarsmen are rowing in such perfect unison. It's like this perfect swing. It's like a simultaneous shared flow state, basically, right? Which is amongst a group of people, which is like kind of insane. Like, I mean, to even think about, it's really hard for you to get into your own flow state, right? To think that you somehow synced up your, flow states with 8 other people. And, and that's the term they call it in rowing is swing, right? And it got me thinking about like, I was like, that's a really cool concept, and then I started to think about this as I was writing on this particular day. And, I half jokingly said, I think Amelia and I are swingers because like I feel like every single day when I sit down to go write, like I just don't know what the fuck I'm going to talk about. I'm tired, I'm groggy, and whatever. it's like somehow magically in the middle of all this, like, you know, this whole entire process is living for two, right? And like Amelia and I doing this stuff together every single day. I don't know, man. It just like magically seems like words just pop out of my head. And, you know, Amelia and I are just doing our thing in the mornings and doing whatever else stuff that we're doing every single day. And then out pops this like great reflection where I go back and I read them now and I'm like, holy fuck, like we wrote that. I mean, I didn't know that, you know, and yeah, it just feels like I feel like I kind of understand what swing is a little bit, you know, writing through this and reading through it. And it makes me think more and more about the idea around what we're basing Clubity on, which is meaningful work and meaningful connections, right? And meaningful relationships, which is a meaningful work, finding that flow state, stuff that you love to do, but then connecting it with other people and trying to do it all together in a group. There's just something more magical about it, man. When you can, that's one of the things that unites humans together and pushes us forward. Swing is like probably our superpower, you know, like to be able to be in lockstep and connection with a group of other people doing.
Yeah, it makes me think of like people going into battle too, and like, you know, an army would just, you know, just like whatever that flow state was in them or something.
It's wild though, right? So the question is, are you a swinger? Number one, like, do you have a group of people you're doing this stuff with every day? But then second, just about the concept overall of swing and how it impacts humanity, meaningful relationships, all that good stuff. So I'd love to get your guys' thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I was in swing with more people. Purpose of life in a way, in terms of, you know, we aren't a single island, and no one ever is, you know, in terms of even how we are upbringing and where anyone got to where they are. And I think it is a beautiful thing to be in swing of with people. And I know I've actually been thinking about, I like to be social like one day a week, almost like, you know, during the week. And
yeah,
I went to trivia last night with some friends, but
nice.
Trivia is really not my thing. But I thought about like maybe joining like a choir group or something like that. And you know, so I think of that, like being in that flow state, let's say like you're all in the perfect pitch or whatever, just, you know, all amateur singers, so it's probably not great, but still that idea, and there's different levels of that flow compared to if you're an expert athlete. So I think it can be hard for me to find people to swing with. It makes me think of like dancing. Like sometimes I used to do swing dancing a little bit.
No, I didn't know that.
And some dancers you just completely have such a great flow with, and it's obviously a little bit of them too, and it's something really just kind of magical. Let's say even just you're on beat with all the music and like the little accents of the music, and it's really great. So I think it is kind of one of those experiences of awe to be in swing, you know, or in tune in that flow zone with other people. And I think it is. And I wonder if it is like an awe thing that actually helps build bonding, because I think it's like, it was really important for us when we evolved to, you know, be able to trust people and be a close knit, because like there was, you know, shit was real back in the day.
It's real still. I mean, it's just, different problems.
But so I think, I think I need to find more people to swing with, is what I'm saying. And I do get a lot out of it, but I think it can also be even something like when I'm taking my students on a backpacking trip, we always do once a year for my students. You know, even when we're hiking through the woods, it can even seem like we're all in step. We're all like, maybe in a zone, some students are chatting, but it's just like a natural kind of aura. It feels like it's occurring. Like everyone's just being their self, how they want to be, which can be kind of easier out in nature, I feel like.
And complimenting each other along the way, you know, it's like the boys in the boat, like, you know, each one of them, not all of them were the best athletes, you know, necessarily, but it was like when they actually experimenting with removing a few of them in and out where they thought was a weaker person, and the boat would get worse. Like, you know, and they're like, why is this happening? It was because they were in such lockstep together and they'd been training for so long together.
Yeah.
They just knew how to make each other collectively better versus individually. I mean, it's just such a cool concept. I was watching like the Beatles had that, I was like a Netflix show or maybe it was on Apple TV or something like that over, I think the summer or last year, where they showed them making an album together, like one of their last albums before they broke up. And it was wild watching their creative process. It was like they would just sit down and they would have like a couple lyrics on a page, and then like an hour later they would have one of the most famous songs in the history of the world, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds or whatever. And you're like, how the fuck did that just happen? They're like, no, you do this and you do that and you do this and let's try this. And then all of a sudden it's like, and you're like, what the fuck? How is that possible? It's just pretty magical. Yeah, true.
I think it's just like people always talk about, oh, there's chemistry there. There's chemistry. And sometimes like, what the fuck is chemistry? Because it sounds like something you can see, like some physical lines drawn or something, but it just can happen. Whether it's chemistry between you and your partner or a basketball team, you know, the 1995-6 Bulls or something, you know, it's the whole is more than the sum of the parts, is I guess you're kind of alluding to.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's true. And I are swingers. I mean, we've been swinging every night for 330 episodes of Yomel. I mean, like, no joke, man. We talk about just pop on this podcast every night, and we're, you know, it's like you could be in the shittiest mood beforehand or tired as hell or whatever, and then all of a sudden, like it just, I don't know, like we just go into like this weird place, and like poof, an hour later, an hour and 20 minutes later, or whatever, however long it is, we like look up and we're like, fuck, I gotta go to bed, you know? Like it's every fucking night, you know? And like you said, you just play off each other's energy, and it helps each other to, you know, when you're in your own, you're doing stuff you love to do together, it just makes each other better. Sure, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, for me, I think I agree. I mean, as far as what we do as a human individual, we need to have, I guess, the unison of other people, meaning i.e. meaningful relationship. And for me, is I look at life as a team sport, because you cannot play life by yourself. When you have a teammate, because you know you mentioned the flow state, you can get into a flow state individually, but you can actually be able to be nudged into a flow state very, very easier once you have that teammate with a meaningful relationship. Like you and I talk about mantra the other day, right? When you and I talk about people must stand, we're talking about the double for train. These mantra are essentially, it usher us into that flow state so easily. So as a team, you can like transition into the flow state without much effort, because the team actually builds up what you have and what you lack. And I think this is why a team in rhythm is going to be so much more formidable than a team with big players, great players, whatever. If a team is in unison, like you don't have to be the best, like each individual contributor doesn't have to be the best of the best. But if the team are in rhythm, once they're in the rhythm, the flow state starts to spread. Like it starts to cascade among the team, and these guys become so much more than themselves. And this is why it reminds me of how human species have been able to become the apex animal in the animal kingdom, not because they are strongest, not because they're the fastest, not because they are, we are not, the top of any of those traits. We don't have the sharpest teeth. We don't have the toughest skin. We don't have the fastest speed, but yet we're able to, like we go on a hunt, right? We don't have to go and sit there and explain to another person like an hour to say, hey, this is how we do things. All I have to do is give you a signal. I give you a hand wave, or I give you an eye gesture. These are triggers of the mantra that you and I talked about the other day. It gets us into this unison, and we can really rapidly understand one another. And that's the thing, is when we have a person, what we talked about yesterday is about sharing, right, Chris? When you share with somebody, but that person that you're sharing with is able to be receptive of the idea, right? This is when your energy start to be in line, and it's going to add, and then you get more energy out of it, and it speeds up the process, and you're able to come up with like really, really genius ideas and concept out of that. And like you talk about, I mentioned the Beatles as well. These guys have already a history together, and they understand the other in a way that you and I understand, because we have been doing this for so long, that a lot of things that you and I talk about, it's very, I mean, it's clear to you and me what we're talking about when we talk about meaningful relationship. We talk about meaningful work.
You don't have to explain it to me, right? You just say a word, and that zooms back, years of conversations, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know what you mean. Let's elevate forward.
And then when you take that and you elevate to the next level, it's so easy to go to the next level, because if you're talking about go from 0 to that level, it is monumental, just because there's so much stuff that we've done. Just talking about Yomo itself, we're looking at 330 episodes. When we look at it, it's a huge feat just to have that many episodes on a daily basis. And not only that, you have to read the books, right? Write the reflection, go on to the Yomo and talk about it. So you think about 330 blog posts and 30 episodes of podcast, that's a lot of work. But because even for me to talk about these things in general, without the building blocks of what we did in the past, we wouldn't be able to get to this point where this is how human nature is going to shape the humanity, and is how, like you say, the evolutions of humans via this character, that superpower and whatnot. And I think, that builds up along the way that we really take for granted, just because we say, hey, what we did. You don't judge a person by one episode, because you have to take on their whole entire experience, because I can go to you as a expert salesperson and say, hey, Chris, can you give me a strategy to sell this widget, right? And you say, hey, I'll give you 5 minutes. It's not 5 minutes you spend, it's your 20 years of experience that you're giving me. So it's not the same thing. This is why that's why the interesting part is when you mention the Beatles and how they can, come up with a great song by, just get together and, play some beat, and then suddenly you have voila. This is the collectiveness of the human power. It's so vast in my mind, because like you say, it's one of those things that we are able to build on top of the others' knowledge and energy, because as long as the wavelengths are the same, i.e. you're in rhythm, like you go on dancing, for example, right? When you're in rhythm, right, you get into the rhythm because of the beat, because they tap or they make some kind of gesture. You can get into the rhythm so easy just because there is a external, I guess, a guide of sort, and we are born or built for picking up rhythms, picking up patterns. And I think that's for us in kind of like the reflection of this particular, I guess, the boys in the boat. These guys are essentially a miniature version of human species. You think about it, they collectively are one. You're talking about they are all individual, but they are
it's not
one
individuals.
boat. But they are one boat. You think about it, if one of them are out of rhythm, the boat is going to not gonna go well and won't go that fast.
They catch a crab.
You think about the whole rowing team. They are one for the boat to go in that way and that fast and that speed. So you think about the hunt in the ancient days, where you have a group of people, 8 to 10 people, right? Just like this team here. They go and hunt a gazelle or woolly mammoth or saber-toothed tiger, whatever there is out there, and they hunt them and successfully. This is how we're still here today. Because if not, then you and I would not exist today, just because they were not able to get into rhythm, into unison as his team. So that trait is an innate trait that human beings is given that no one else has. Just like we're talking about, hey, dogs, they don't talk to each other. Hey, don't shit on the carpet. I mean, this old dog has been trained for like 10 years, 15 years, and then they can bring a new dog, and the dog shit on the carpet.
So do you ever run with a running partner?
Group? Yeah, I have.
Do you feel like you run faster or like easier when you're doing that?
They talk about biking, like I don't know about biking in a group, or I've done a little bit, but they talk about how looking at the top of a mountain with someone you trust or a group of people, it seems less daunting than if you're there by yourself. And there's kind of like little psychological studies about like your body will almost like end up telling you need less energy to do it, because like you feel like you're able to tap into the energy of the group and the people around you. And I don't know, when Drew was talking about, I just kept thinking about how we do really like to, I think it is natural to want to like get in sync with people. And it's like, you can think about too, and like if you've ever been in a situation where you're like talking with someone and just the conversation seems kind of off or just like not quite going right, it's like you want to try to get in sync. I think we do naturally, because I think like naturally we're just gonna like, we know the benefits of like cooperation. They're like instinctually there, I think, for us. And so it's always like, there's always like advantages to cooperate and be in sync. And so I think we're like a lot of times subconsciously like trying to like, do that with people, whether it's like rowing or whether it's dancing or whether it's just having a conversation.
Music, I mean, these are fundamentals of humanity.
Yep.
I mean, music's, dancing, like you said, I mean, these are,
I mean, they do like psychological experiments where people would get people to tap their feet together, right? And once they tap their feet together, they are much more agreeable with each other, just because they are able to,
That's good.
The way I feel is that the more unison you are in a group, the easiest for you to get into the flow state. That you can do like 2-person, right? And they can help you flow as well. But if you're in a team of 3, 4, 5, or 8 people, if 7 people are in unison and you're the one odd out, it's easier for you to get into unison with them. And once you do that, you are essentially being in a flow state too. It's easy for you to get into the flow state just because you think about everybody's doing the rowing and you also rolling, and all you can feel is basically you kind of tune out everything else, because the repetitions of more individuals make it stronger. for the frequency or the wavelength that you jive with.
I don't know why I keep getting this thought in my head of, I don't know if it was a Queen concert or something, somebody when they were playing like Wembley Stadium and they were like singing a really famous song and they just like, I think like the microphone went out on accident or whatever and the crowd just like picked it up, and like there's like this amazing video of them just like singing the whole song and in unison, and the whole crowd is just like, you know, like just like it's like incredible, like, you know, voice just comes from all these people and they're all just like connected together and, you know, pick it up immediately, and like it's, you know, I mean, you see this at concerts all the time, you know, with like, you know, people moving and dancing to a, you know, like an EDM concert.
Sometimes it's involuntary. It's involuntary too, just because when you're in like, you know, like you say, in some concert or in some kind of a sports event where, you know, there's some kind of you know,
the wave,
a wave, whatever, you do the wave, and, you know, you should do the wave because it's just one of those things where you can't help it. Sometimes you don't think about it. When your wave comes, you think about it. Have you been in those places where, oh, I think I'm going to do the wave, or I'm going to decide to do the wave or not to do it? You just don't think about it. Just do it, right?
Right.
It's involuntary in a way. And same thing
so
with
cool to watch
with the music and the concert, right? Yeah. So collectively, we have a desire to be in a unison with other people. And especially whenever you have the people that in your team that you have meaningful relationship with, meaningful connection, meaning that if I say something, you understand that, right? Because we talked about yesterday, if you share something but the other person doesn't understand it, it actually
sucks. It's worse. It's horrible.
Right?
Yeah, it's worthless. I mean, it's worthless. It's
but to get into the rhythm with the people that understands you and what you say, it actually elevates you so much higher in terms of your I guess joyful feelings of being, and getting to a flow state is much easier in a team sport. So I think, you know, for me is a team of, you know, 4 or 5 people. It's probably gonna be much better to get into flow state than a team of 2. But you know, a 2, it's infinitely more than 1.
But it makes me think about, like, even Chris is talking about, like, you know, but working individually, like, you know, you can kind of get in that flow state. Or I even feel for myself sometimes when I'm running and it's like, let's say I've had like a stressful day and like all these thoughts in my head, like going for like a nice long run, it's almost like my thoughts are able to get in a flow state and I'm almost able to have a synchronicity with them. You know, it's not like there's all of a sudden so much conflicting tension between things. It's like, this boom, kind of like things almost like come to light or something. And I still don't know why that happens. You know, when I run, it's a de-stress.
Honestly, it's like a meditation. That's like prayer, meditation, you know, connecting with your inner voice. You know, I guess you can get in tune with your own emotions and your own, the multitudes within you, your thoughts, your consciousness, your connectivity to the universe. I mean, it could probably go both ways, right? And we think of others as humans, I would say, but if you're not connected to yourself and not in swing with yourself, how can you be in swing with other people, right? It's like, if you know what I mean?
I do. And I think, well, yeah, like whether sometimes you're actually listening to yourself, because I've been thinking about recently, like how important, like we all like to be heard. And yet, like, why did the fact of wanting to be heard evolve? Well, the only things that do evolve are things that have sustained themselves, or things that have replicated. So it's like, and I'm trying to kind of piece things together these days when I'm thinking about it. Like, so the reason we like to be heard is because being heard was almost like an evolutionary advantage or something. I don't know.
Because we needed to share with each other. Because like because like as True was kind of alluding to, I think he didn't go all the way to say it.
Yeah, because we also can share like important information. Like, I mean, oh my God, Chris, there's a lion behind you.
Right, exactly. He basically said it like, you know, that's kind of our collective superpower as a human race that catapulted us forward amongst everybody, is our ability to cooperate and be in unison, you know, with important. I mean, it might be something stupid as a song, or it might be something as important as, you know, we're hunting dinner together or whatever.
Well, and I think a lot of species cooperate together. What do you think of bees or things like that? And it's, you know, and I don't know much about the
those are family members though. They're not. They don't cooperate outside of their family. Those are all. They're all.
I don't know about
one colony against another colony. They don't. They work good. Yeah.
That's because that's why you have like a queen bee, right? They're all kids, you know, they're all cousins, you know, basically of each other. And then same thing with
small mafias. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's basically what it is. Well, the thing is with bees, because it's interesting you say that, because with bees they do cooperate, and you see it with ants and there are other living entities in this world that do cooperate. Obviously, even bacteria cooperate on a lot of levels, just like to colonize your gut or what. But the bees and ants, they don't have any individualistic traits. Like they just do whatever's needed by the colony because they're brothers and sisters, right? Like if your family, think about your family, right? You know, if your family's like, hey, Snow, I need you to go do the trash, and you're like, I'm not a trash person, you know, but they're like, just take the trash out, we need to do that for the family, you know what I mean? You're like, okay, fine, I'll do it. We don't, like, eventually just do these things you don't want to do, and you'll sacrifice for your family just because it's your family, right? Because you want to deep down inside continue on your DNA.
Even if you don't want to, your genes want you. The genes want to, which I think is funny. Like if you look at like how like why happiness can be so challenging in the modern life, because your genes don't want you to be happy. Your genes just want you to reproduce, and they want your kin to reproduce, and they want your brothers, kins to reproduce.
But to reproduce, you need to be happy, probably.
I don't think that's true.
No, I didn't. The most likely people to reproduce are probably people that are happy. Is probably why we want to be happy, whatever that term is, right?
To be happy, to be happy in my world is the absence of misery.
There you go. I would rather.
I think a lot of people can just have like concepts. Like happiness is really just like some concept that we decided to make up through language. But I feel like in like society, but like reproducing is just like reproducing. You know?
But who do you gravitate toward?
Me? What do you mean? Who do I gravitate? What do you mean?
Who does anybody gravitate toward? Do they gravitate toward the happy-go-lucky dude that's like, you know, that seems like they're confident, living their best life, you know, like feel like they're on purpose.
You gravitate towards an angry.
Well, there's some evolutionary psychology behind that, and that we're gonna want to gravitate and be friends with people who we feel like can heighten our social status. Right. So you're gonna really want to be friends with somebody who's like seems like, you know, they're more in control, you know, like rather than some like grouch who's just like blaming something because like. Really, you think it's going to raise your social status to be near them.
Sure. Whatever evolutionarily reason is, we're attracted more toward people that are
right. The more you adhere, the more you adhere to your genes wants, the less miserable you will be.
I mean, if you're on a team and you're trying to find your swing, like, do you want unstable people and insecure people and people that, you know, you can't trust?
No, that's going to lower your status.
No, I know what I'm saying. It's like you can't. Like the people that are the most stable people usually are the people that are the most probably fulfilled, you know, and purpose driven. Call it happy, whatever you want to call it. Like, I don't know what that state of, you know, fulfillment is, but like feeling like they're in a balanced, fulfilled state, right? They're people that are usually secure and stable. And like that's attractive to other people because we like stability and consistency, right? We don't want erratic, psychopathic behavior all the time because we don't know how to process that.
I think there are some themes throughout times, but it's like, you know, they talk about how, but this idea of what status is, though, is based upon cultural norms. Like, what does it mean to be a high status? Like, you know, these days it's like, you know, well, being humble, it's like, you know, a good status thing. We don't like to see people who are, and yet that's kind of can change from culture to culture. You know, like the Eastern culture is very different than the Western culture in terms of like, what does it mean to be like certain levels of status, I guess.
I agree. I think as it relates to this conversation of finding your swing with a group of people, like, if I know that you're prone to completely go off the fucking rocker, I don't want to get in a boat with you.
Oh,
you know?
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't care if you're a high status person or not. If you fuck me over one time, I'm going to remember it, right? You know, like, I mean, I can't find my swing with erratic people, right? You know, like if True only came to this, you know, once every 5 episodes, I'd be like, fuck it, I don't want to fucking do this with him. You know, I don't care if it's the best episode ever the next day that we get on a call, but like if every single day that I want to show up and have a good conversation, or maybe even a so-so conversation, but just have a conversation, and True's is not reliable. He's not gonna be a swinger with me. You know what I mean? Like I don't want that, right? Like
you can't be in rhythm with someone you can't predict, right?
Or trust,
it's not predictable. You can't trust, right? And so it's all about getting into rhythm, and rhythm is what gives us that, I guess, collective feeling. And that collective feeling, it gives you a sense of safety, and it gives us an advantage in a way, an evolutionary advantage. That's why it feels better. You're not being tortured. Okay, so to me, it's like if you have, for most of my life, a lot of things I have in my head are worries, right? Worries of this, worry I have to pay bills, worries I have to make sure that I can provide, make sure I'm safe or whatever. So it's all these worries. These will make what makes you not happy, meaning not peace. So whenever you say, well, all these are taken care of, I'm able to fulfill what a gene's looking for, then I feel not bad, i.e., good. Because you think about, if I were say I'm a human person and I need to breathe oxygen, and you put me into a room with a bunch of CO2, right? I feel suffocated, and that feels bad. And feels bad is opposite of feeling good, which is not bad. So I think if you fulfills the DNA's or the genes wants, you becomes this I guess, pain, non stress, non. However
but that's still always going to be like, what do they call the hedonic treadmill, though? Because especially guys always think we end up reproducing more, or we can gain more status, or we can gain
the
more
thing
money.
Is, I think there are certain traits that do give you that, but there's certain traits that you don't. Because, for example, I say I want to breathe air, right? But the thing is, what I'm breathing is optimal enough. If I go beyond that threshold of oxygen mixture, then my body tells me, hey, it's hard to breathe, or I get lightheaded, or whatever the symptoms is. My body is telling me this is not optimal. So it tells me that at this state, I feel good. I don't have to worry about the breathing part. I can worry about, making friends or do whatever. But at that optimal state, I'm fulfilled. The hedonic state, I think it's a little bit.
That's about pleasure. That like hedonic. The hedonic treadmill is like seeking only pleasure. I don't think either one of us is saying like, we're saying seek what is aligned in a balanced state, like, right? Like that doesn't necessarily always mean that it's.
But I think it's about being fulfilling the gene's wishes, right? Because having a status does not fulfill the gene's wishes, because I think the status is what we as a human species have come to agree what that is, and that is really isn't the exact fit, exact feel for the gene. And you say, well, you give me this, it's all right, but it's not the right one. I want, give me a flower. No, it's not the right flower. I want a particular flower or whatever it is. I need that. And so I think if you have gone to the I guess on that particular journey where you're trying to find something to fulfill, but what you're providing the system or your gene is not exactly. So you think about, let's say you have a candy machine and it needs a quarter, right? But you can put in a nickel, it will take it, but it's not the right size or the right whatever. And they say, well, I can't give you the price, whatever the candy is. I can't give it to you because it's not the exact. It's similar, but it's not exact. So as a human, we construct the statuses as I guess, a symbolic way to measure the safety ladder of a way. And so that it kind of fills in the evolutionary need to be in a group, and to be like not the last and get left behind and get eaten, right? But that is essentially more like a decoy, or it's not real. It's not the exact need that the gene wants, and so you keep looking for it. You get something, and oh no, not the right one. So you put in a penny, okay, it starts to process. Nope, okay, and then you put in a dime, it's up to process. Nope. So it keeps asking you for more and more, because that's the hedonic treadmill that I'm thinking about. Because you're giving it something, but it's not what it wants. So it's continue to ask for more and more and more and more. But I think if you give it exactly what it wants, it'll stop. Just like breathing, for example, it'll stop, right? So when you go and you have a meaningful relationship, right? You say, hey, I like this. This is great. Yeah. I don't want anything more. Right?
But I think that's true. But things don't last forever, because you have a satisfied meal. Like, man, I do not need any more. I am satisfied. what's gonna happen in 8 hours? Oh shit, I'm hungry.
Yes,
So, I
because
mean, this is always fleeting.
I think
But in these
it'll
flow
ask
states,
you for
flow
for
states
another
good because
quarter.
if we ate and then we were satisfied for the rest of our life, we would die.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, that's why balance is the word for me, because it's always a balancing act, right? Like you're never in a perfect aligned state. Like, sometimes you're going to go this way, sometimes you're going to go this way, and you got to find your way back to, to feeling, okay, I'm hungry, but I'm not super hungry. I mean, I've got enough food to do what I need to do, and it was a good meal, but I'm not like, like to your point of like not overeating, not undereating, but like, maybe sometimes you strategically do that, if you're like, oh, but either way, it's always a balancing act, because balance is you're never perfectly in balance, right? It's always a little off either way, but you're the one that has to tip the scales one way or the other to make sure that you are in the place that you want to be, or at least going back toward the place that you want to be, right? Like that's why I am such a huge believer of, like, this is why Clubany and True and I both connect on balance as one of our core values of Clubany, and why, it's one of the biggest things we did with the whole core values quest. And, I mean, all these things, right? Because it's like, we don't want extremes. I don't want Elon Musk fucking people around me.
It's so easy, like you say, like to get out of balance, because whether there's something happened too, like all of a sudden came up and you had to go drive to, I don't know, the grocery, something came up, or I had to go drive to the grocery store, then like gets you out of balance, because then how am I gonna get my workout in, or I was supposed to do this or meet up with these people. So I mean, I agree, it's like, there's, and so you have to be aware there's always gonna be things that throw you off balance, but then getting back on balance, whether through your core values or whatever, to bring you back in balance.
Right. Yeah, whatever your philosophical strategies are. Like Drew was saying, the mantras, right? Like the boys in the boat had a mantra. It was called "Mind in the Boat." They would say to each other, "MIB, MIB." When they would see that they were drifting from the boat, right? And they could tell that they were distracted. They're like, "Hey, get your mind in the boat," and they're like, "Oh, okay, my mind's in the boat. We're all together," like, and that's all I'm focused on right now, So like, that is why mantras matter. That is why values matter. Those are mantras, for the most part. That's why all the things that,
to sort of focus on something,
to bring you back toward where you want to go, to be like, oh, okay, you're drifting, like, get the fuck back on, toward where you want to be.
Keeps telling Chris, "I want for train, I want for train." Every time he comes and he has some kind of like a stressful day at work, and I keep saying, "Don't want for train." And, okay, yeah.
Right. It's like
I'll do that, right? And so it's like taking a chill pill, So that's the thing is, a lot of people need to have mantra for you to make that shortcut, because like they don't want for train, there's a huge backstory behind it. The Beaver Mustang, there's a huge backstory behind it. The MIB in the book, I'm sure there's a huge backstory behind it. Everybody understand what it is and the significance of it. It's easy for them to, okay, if I were to be reminded of MIB, I can get to that image and I can start to roll and I can get up to speed so quickly. Because a lot of times, if you and I talk about, hey, you just meditate. If we don't know what meditate is and we don't talk about meditation, there are thousands of things we can think about in terms of what meditation means to us.
It's incredibly important to get you back into balance state to swing, right? Like you got like just think about if you showed up, how many days, of any given point in time in your day when your mood is fluctuating up and down, and you had to go swing with somebody, right? Like if you just always took whatever baggage you walked into that with, and like that was how you were going to show up that day, you're fucked. I mean, I right before this call, like, no, I shit you not, like, I've this stupid rucksack running every day, like my back hurts so bad. I had the worst throbbing fucking headache. Today there was like so many crazy things going on at work. I was like, oh my God, I am fucking like tired of shit. Want to go to bed, immediately, like I hear, or even just just getting on the call with you guys, I'm like, oh, okay, all right, kind of my own mind in the boat, like, let's have fun. Like, and I don't have a headache right now, like I'm fine, like I have plenty of energy, like I'll probably crash as soon as this call is over, and I'll probably just go to bed and like, and go, man, what a long day, like always, but like that's the best days ever, right? But this is why, like, how you find your swing with people, right? Like you give each other energy, and you enjoy the conversations, and you enjoy the time you spend with them, and it just gets better and better, right?
And the more you in sync with the other person, it's very easy to get to flow state, because I do this. Every time I get onto this call, my attention is 100 focused on the call. I'm like, I have 4 kids, okay? There are things to do, and I completely forget about what I promised people. Once I'm on the call with Chris, I'm here. I don't remember anything that was said to me. I'm always getting to a flow state because when we got on this call, it's like I'm in my own sphere. I do that so many times where I say, "Oh, sorry, I completely forgot." That we want to do this, blah blah. Once I get, I mean, even if somebody asks me, my daughter asks me something right before I get on the call, and I promise that I might do something, the moment I get on the call, that thought disappears. It completely disappears.
Mind in the boat.
It's like, hey, Dad, give me the credit card, so I can go and order something from Amazon, right? And when I get a card, that thought's completely disappears. It's like, oh shit, give you the credit card. And so, to me, having somebody to share your thought that is being appreciated and receptive, I think that makes you, I don't know, it gives you energy, and it gives you that joyful feeling of life, right?
It makes life more enjoyable. It makes you feel fulfilled.
When you find however you want to define it, but for me, it's like, if I am giving my body what it asks for, it doesn't bugs me. It doesn't tug on me and say, hey, I need food, I need to breathe air, or it gives me this awful feelings of, pain, exhaustion, headaches, whatever. Those things, if it goes away, let's say you have a headache, right? When a headache goes away, it feels good.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, final thoughts, for the night. Snow, any final thoughts you want to share?
I think it was a neat conversation just to think about like human energy when humans are in that flow state together, and just really brought me back down to the greatness of like being with people, and making sure in my life I take advantage of those awe-inspiring experiences, whether it's going to a concert, dancing, or singing in a choir, or playing in a soccer game, and just to be present in those moments and just sort of find pleasure in those moments throughout our life.
Yeah, like that. Hopefully you can do that every day, honestly. That's find people you can swing with every day, that you can do your meaningful work with, where it's like never gets old, right? It's always fun, and you can always do what you want to do. I like that. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, meaningful work, meaningful relationship. And to me, we keep saying that, and this is just another proof of evidence that we have to have other people to make our life fulfill and to elevate that. You can't live by yourself, and you can't live only for yourself. You have to live for others as well.
Agreed. And I think my final thought is this is a really good book. So if you haven't read it, or
it looks like
there's a movie. There's a movie by the same title. It came out in.
I doubt it's probably not as good.
I don't know. Now I need to go watch the movie. But the book was like, man, I swear to you, it's one of those books where you're just like start to finish, just like
totally. Yeah, books you see, better, because when it's hard to make the details in a visual depiction, so you're gonna start to lose some of the context.
Well, they try to condense all this down to 2 hours or whatever it is, and it's like it's hard to.
Yeah, because it's also like when you are creating something magically using the word, right? That is much easier than having to replicate and show you what that means. I mean, you can say, hey, I can draw you a house, right? Build a house for me. I can draw whatever I want. I can draw like, hey, put a giant moon on top of this one hole or whatever, and it's easy to draw. You can draw anything you want. You can make that into the sun or the moon or whatever, and to fulfill that, it's not easy because it's gonna melt the thing, or it's too heavy. It's not easy to fulfill something that somebody can imagine and create out. So the movies is not gonna be able to fulfill all of the intent of the author's imagination. Books are usually much better than movies. Even a very, very good director can get maybe close to it, but can never surpass a book.
Unless the director of the movie is the author of the book. And that maybe they should do that instead of passing it on to somebody else. Appreciate you all joining. We'll see you tomorrow.